Mayor Adams rejects the idea of calling in a receiver to fix Rikers. He says it's up to the city to handle it. Now it's up to Corrections Commissioner Louis Molina to prove the mayor is right. He's here to talk about it. So, Commissioner, first question. Despite pleas from advocates, a federal judge refused to appoint a receiver, giving you more time to try to fix the problems at Rikers. What exactly are you going to do?
So thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate the judge seeing the momentum that we've been able to begin in rebuilding and turning around the department. We have done a number of things. We have significantly reduced staff shortages in the department. We have reinstituted programming for staff. We have put in a violence reduction plan that has affected our young adult facility in very, very positive ways to bring it to a level of calm that it hasn't had for some years. So we've done a lot, but with that said, we still have a lot more to do, because from 2015 to 2021, there was just significant disinvestment, not only in staff and persons in custody, but even in our infrastructure.
So why was there this disinvestment, given the fact that Rikers was such an important problem?
I think once the decision was made to close Rikers Island in August of 2027, that's the date when we can no longer have defendants on Rikers Island, there was no more investment made on the island, even though it was years ahead into the future when that was going to happen. And when you're running jail facilities, like you're running hospitals and any other type of congregate setting where you're taking care of vulnerable people, the infrastructure and the people that work in those facilities need regular training, and the facilities themselves need investment, and that just did not happen.
So are you blaming the de Blasio administration?
Well, the former administration made some decisions that critically hurt the agency, just to be quite frank. What we inherited.
Like what hurt the agency?
A number of things. I think one is staff had to have investment in the staff. They attrited over 2,000 officers out of the department because they wanted a smaller staffing ratio footprint for the new borough-based jails. In addition to that...
So they moved too quickly to reduce the staff?
I think that move was too quickly to reduce the number of staff that we had at the time, going back to 2019. So I think that's one area. The other areas is during the pandemic, programming was stopped. Workforce development programming was stopped. You know, when you run a hospital, you don't say only the doctors come to work and all the nurses and everything that supports that stays home. And the programmatic part of our model, they were just not doing. So the detainees really had no activities to keep them busy and to keep them supported. So that led to violence? Well, idleness in any jail or prison often leads to violence. In addition to that, the practical things in corrections just were not being done. We brought back tactical security operations. In 2021 alone, they only had one. We've had over 40 this year, which led to the removal of over 4,700 weapons and over 1,000 contraband narcotics.
You know, I seem to recall that the de Blasio administration's first corrections commissioner was commuting from Maine. Do you think that and spent a lot of time in Maine, do you think that added to the problems because it was, there wasn't a hand on what was going on all the time?
Well, I worked for Commissioner Pond back in 2016, and I thought he was a very hands-on commissioner.
But all the trips to Maine, I mean...
Yeah, you know, I can't speak to why he went to Maine so much. You know, I myself reside in the city. This is a 24/7 job, so I have to do it from within the New York City limits in order to manage it well. So I can't really comment on why he was in Maine so much.
So here's the bottom line. As you touched on, there have been complaints that there's massive staffing shortages, and most of that's because the union contract allows unlimited sick days. But I know that you've got it down. It used to be 2,000 a day. Now you've got it down to about 800 a day, which is about 12% of the staff. But still, people are refusing to turn up daily. How do you fix that without ripping up the union contract? Yeah. I mean, how do you get them to come to work every day? So
I just want to be flat out. This is not a union contract problem. This was always a management problem. We had within the department, even for many, many years, standards and expectations of how individuals who call out sick should be managed. And that just was not done. There was just no accountability that existed. So now that we have accountability, we're enforcing policies. A number of people that are out are recovering from workforce injuries.
800?
Well, not all 800 of them are, but it used to be actually over 2,600 that were out, and we've gotten it just under 800 now. That's still a high number, but it's significantly down, 65%, to where it was on January 1st when we took over the department.
But I guess the question is, how do you run the jail when you have so many people who aren't there and not being replaced? I mean, how do you, I mean, people complain that they have to work, you know, double shift, triple shifts. How do you run a jail like that when you don't have enough people?
Yeah, so we've actually reduced the number of, significantly reduced triples. Staff are back to working 8 hours with the exception of 2 facilities, which we are transitioning to 8 hours. We have all of the posts. When we first came in, the number of unstaffed posts on the floor was about 110. We start out typically in a day maybe with 20, and then we begin to redeploy staff from other areas to cover those posts. So we are covering those posts. We are able to provide services to the people in our custody, and we're managing.
Do you think the union contract has to be renegotiated?
Well, I think as contracts expire, there's always going to be renegotiation that occurs between the
But what
city.
do you want to see happen? What kinds of changes do you want to see in the contract that would make it easier for you to manage Rikers Island and prevent what's been going on?
Yeah, I don't think that there's any one thing in the contract that I have seen that prevents me to manage the department. What the department or any agency has to do, its commissioner has to manage the agency, right, and hold people accountable. The union contract doesn't prevent me from doing that.
So one of the things you're considering as a possibility is to hire wardens and deputy wardens from outside the department. So I have 2 questions about that. Will the unions let you, and how will that change things?
So there's no intention or any plan to hire deputy wardens from outside the department.
Just wardens?
Just the warden rank. And what we want is, and what we're petitioning the court for, is the flexibility for me as commissioner or any commissioner in DOC to be able to appoint candidates from outside if they're qualified in order to manage our facilities. We need this option now because so much experience has left the agency, and we need individuals that have been through similar and alike challenges that we have in our jail today to be able to mentor and lead our workforce through it.
But where would you find these people, number one? Are they out of state, upstate, at state prisons? And number 2, what makes you think that they would be better than promoting from within?
So a number of reasons. One is we have done national recruitments already. So we recently brought on 3 deputy commissioners that oversee security, administration, and facility operations. We've also brought in a senior deputy commissioner. All of these individuals, to include our 2 associate commissioners, have collectively hundreds of years of experience, and they hail from around the country. Upstate New York, as far as Los Angeles, New Jersey, Connecticut. And these individuals have decades of correctional management and uniform correction experience. So we would recruit individuals at the warden level from that same sort of areas.
So 18 people have died so far at Rikers so far this year, which is, I guess, the highest total since 2013 when 23 people died. Do you think that's acceptable?
Oh, no. 1 death is not acceptable, right? But, you know, we do have a lot of vulnerable people that come in with significant pre-existing health conditions. Some of them have co-occurring issues dealing with substance abuse addiction. So, you know, it's not acceptable, and we do everything we can to mitigate against that and learn from, you know, where we can do better.
But, you know, there are reports that 9 of those 18, that's half of them, had died because they had missed medical appointments, or they had missed medical appointments. If you know that they have problems, how is it acceptable for them to miss medical appointments, not be taken to get the help that they need?
Yeah. So medical appointments, the majority of medical scheduled appointments that are missed are because the patient is refusing to go. In fiscal year 22 alone, our independent health service provider, Correctional Health Services, scheduled over 500,000 medical encounters with the population, which is just about just under 6,000 individuals. So we have to make sure that we have sort of a synergy between correctional health services and security operations so that we are booking the appropriate number of appointments so that patients can be seen. But we've significantly reduced persons missing appointments because of some other issue besides refusal.
But is it also a question of not having enough people to bring them to the medical appointments because of staff shortages?
That may have been the case last year when there was a significant staff shortages. It is not the case today. Now, there are occasions where there could be an incident or something being managed where staff may not be available at that moment to bring someone to an appointment. But that is, I can tell you, from May to August, we had 192 medical appointments scheduled, and only on 1,200 of those occasions did someone miss an appointment because there was a challenge with other commitments that we had to address to be able to not bring that person, for example, to their eye doctor appointment or dental appointment.
Okay, well, we'll be right back with more from Corrections Commissioner Louis Molina. Welcome back. I'm talking with Corrections Commissioner Louis Molina. You know, former Controller Scott Stringer estimated that it cost $500,000 to keep somebody at Rikers for a year. That's an astonishing number. How is that possible? Was he right? Was he wrong?
So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into the cost of incarceration, and I think incarceration in this country is hugely expensive.
$500,000 a year?
I'll tell you, nationally, we spend about over $85 billion in jails and prisons in America to keep people incarcerated. And I agree that I think that we have to be able to divert individuals that are suffering from mental illness to more hospitalization opportunities than to have a justice system response to that issue.
But I think that the average person, when they hear that number, says, what are you spending the money on?
Yeah. Well, the number, that number of over $500,000 a person includes things that are sort of out of our control. I think the actual number is somewhere about $250,000 a year. That's still a significant amount of money to keep someone incarcerated. And what we have is a situation in Rikers where our lengths of stay are double the national average. And that contributes to people staying in the system much, much longer than they need to be.
So I wonder if conditions would get any better once Rikers is closed and the 4 community jails in every borough but Staten Island are open. Will it be better? Will it be worse? Will it be the same?
Well, there's no question that our facilities, we need new facilities, right? And the borough-based jails answer part of that plan. There's a lot of focus on Rikers Island as a place, and I understand sort of the symbolism and what that means to many people that have experienced incarceration and their family members. But really, it's a system issue, not just a Rikers Island DOC issue. So we need every section of our criminal justice system to work, and a major part of that system is the courts. And the courts really need to be able to move these cases along.
But even if you have borough-based jails as opposed to Rikers, it's going to be the same correction officers. It's going to be the same charges of violence. It's going to be the same people who are in the jails, just in different places. So how does it change? How does it get any better just because the walls are prettier?
Sure. So it gets better from this perspective. Many of the contraband weapons that we recover come because of the alien infrastructure of the facility. So with new buildings, you would lessen those opportunities of those things happening.
But there are regular reports that weapons and drugs are regularly brought into the jail, either by people who work in the jail or the people who come to visit prisoners. How come you can't stop it?
Well, a lot of the contraband that comes into the facility, especially drugs, comes in through mail and packages. And we've done a lot to interdict narcotics coming in through the mail and packages. We are working right now on a technology solution that would allow for mail to be scanned and packages to be for packages of things and items that family members buy the incarcerated individuals come from specific retailers so that we know drugs are not coming in.
But, you know, recently I talked to a person who had been in Rikers a few months ago, and he said the person who was ahead of him in the intake section had 2 ounces of marijuana, of weed, in his pockets, and nobody searched him. He brought it in and was selling it in the jail. How is that allowed to happen? It happened just a month ago.
Yeah, so I don't know the specific incident you're talking about. I can tell you that when individuals come through an intake process, they are searched. We do body scan individuals. There are times during that process where we do recover contraband. Sometimes that's drug contraband, sometimes that's weapons. We accept people as they are, and then we go through a process of making sure they're not bringing any contraband items into the facility.
But are you at all worried about the fact that maybe the people who are working there aren't working up to their capacity, that they're ignoring certain problems because they're overworked or they're upset or they don't like the laws or whatever?
Well, in any industry, you're going to have a small percentage of the workforce that doesn't meet your expectations. And when that happens, we hold individuals accountable. There's a disciplinary process, and in some of those occasions, individuals are terminated. If someone's breaking the law, especially a law enforcement officer, then that person is prosecuted. And we've seen that as of late, of that happening, unfortunately. We also have contract providers that sometimes bring in contraband, and we handle them the same way and refer those cases to DOI as well.
But what's the backlog? I'm told that there's a huge backlog in terms of the cases of people who need to be disciplined. What is the backlog now?
So when I came into the agency, we had about a 3,500, 3,700 case backlog of disciplinary cases going all the way back to 2017. I have closed since January over 2,200 disciplinary cases, and in about 180 of those cases, we've had to unfortunately terminate employees, which is not something that I take lightly, but you have to hold people accountable to the expectations, not to ensure that the place is safe, but also for the thousands of other workers that work on Rikers Island, both uniform and non-uniform, who are coming in every day to do a very difficult job.
But in terms of the discipline, it's not just the people who are bringing in contraband. It's also charges that some of the people who work there are hurting inmates. What are you doing to stop that?
So if you're describing what sounds to me like maybe use of force, I would tell you that we have closed more use of force cases in my tenure there under this administration, probably 3 to 4 years worth of what they did in the prior administration. So we are holding people accountable. You need a timely and meaningful discipline process, not only to improve work performance, but also to weed out those that are not appropriate to do the job.
Would you say that the disciplinary process has been timely up to this point?
Well, we had
let me rephrase that. Before you took over as commissioner, do you think that the disciplinary process was timely?
It clearly was not. I don't think that prior to me taking over, anyone was really held accountable, and that's why we inherited a disciplinary backlog of almost 4,000 cases. If that was done, that wouldn't have been there on my first day in office.
So again, we're blaming the de Blasio administration for not doing its job.
Listen, the prior administration was in charge. They made decisions that were not in the best interest of managing the agency. The federal monitor himself has stated in reports after report of the mismanagement that has been allowed to go on for years.
So if you could talk directly to former Mayor de Blasio about what went on in Rikers, what would you say to him? I mean, are you frustrated? Are you angry? I mean, look at what you inherited.
Well, listen, I'm very focused on the work. I'm looking forward. I'm not living in the past. I have a job to do. The mayor appointed me to turn this department around. The federal judge has given us more time to continue with our momentum to turn the department around, and that's what me and my team are focused on doing.
So if you have only 6 months or so before there's another hearing on whether there should be a receivership, is 6 months enough to turn it around? Is 6 months enough to make sufficient progress so that the judge will say, okay, you can continue to do your job?
I think it's enough time for us to continue to increase the confidence of the court and other parties that we are the team that can turn this department around. We're not going to solve every issue in 6 months. It took years to get to this point. But I think we are showing progress. Things are improving. And when the 6-month mark comes, we would have been in office almost a year and a half. Things will be moving in the right direction, and that's what I expect.
But is it going to be fast enough to avoid a receivership?
I think it will be fast enough to show that the city is making a good faith effort. We are making progress, and a receiver is not going to do anything that I'm not doing now, and is not going to be able to do anything faster. It is not a magic answer to solving these issues. Receivers in courts don't turn around agencies, leaders do.
Okay, well, we'll have to leave it right there. But our conversation with Louis Molina continues right after the show on our streaming network, CBS News New York.